Well, in today's video, I'd like to show you what I call the best finish for furniture. Most woodworkers have their own preferences for finishes. The client may have a preference. They may have found something that works better for them over time. Well, in my best finish, I've been using it for over 25 years. And I've not found a better finish for durability, sheeting, and making a rock solid finish on a piece of furniture. My wife has many pieces around the home with this finish on it. It's pretty simple too, and almost anyone can do it. So I'll get into that first. We're going to finish this piece of cherry. It's a cherry panel from a cutoff. I've already sanded it, tacked it. It's ready to go for these purposes here. So what we'll do is talk about the finish. First off, I use Minwax fast drying polyurethane. Okay, Minwax doesn't sponsor me, but I have been using that for, like I said, 25 years. And the first step is really simple. We take the gloss polyurethane and we simply put on one coat of gloss polyurethane. Now, the gloss, you will notice, works almost like a steel. There's no flatness in it, and it just goes on smoothly. I have a natural bristle brush, which I found gives us the best finish. So I'll just put on a thin coat of the natural. Now, some people ask me, why don't you spray it? Why don't you use lacquer? I've used lacquer plenty of times. I like lacquer. It has great benefits. But when I want the durable, solid finish, I use this one. So that just takes a second. Just one coat here. You can see I'll smooth out the brush strokes slowly with the grain. Thin coat. And then we're ready to let that dry. Now, there's one thing you'll know is it takes between 4 to 6 hours to dry. Where I live, it takes generally 4. Higher humidity might take a little longer, but we want to let it dry completely. So we'll come back in 4 to 6 hours. So here we are back. It's been just a little over 4 hours. The surface is dry, so we'll get ready for the next step. Pretty simple. I have 220 grit. I like this kind of sanding block to use. Keeps the scratches down, makes it a little bit more smooth on the surface. Then I'll just kind of scuff sand it with the grain. So the grain on this, it's a glued together board, so just scuff sand it lightly. Again, 220 grit, not going to do much. Knock down some of the dust nibs, grain, and scuff the coat so the next coat in here. That's it. Tack cloth, clean up any dust or material on there. We don't want anything on our finish. It's not supposed to be there. And then we'll go towards this same stuff, Minwax, fast drying polyurethane, except this time with the satin finish. Now the satin finish and the semi-glosses have a lot more solids in them. So I want to make sure we stir those well to get an even mixture. Then it's more of the same. One thing I do between coats a lot, just because it saves time, is I'll just use saran wrap, or you can use a plastic bag, even your Home Depot bag if you want, to wrap your brush. That way you'll not have a dried out brush when you come back. You don't have to clean between each coat. So just a little tip. Now I'll put another thin coat. Always want to do these thin coats as thin as we can so that we don't get any runs. Now, my board here is laying flat. Probably wouldn't run no matter what I did, but I want to make sure that I get a nice even coat. That's the funny thing about finishing sometimes. You can, I mentioned earlier, use lacquer. Spray lacquer on, it's good to go in half an hour, less, 10 minutes. And your finish is done. Some of these fine finishes take, I think, a little more time and planning. So again, I'll go slowly over the end, even out my brush strokes, and then I'm ready to wait for my next 4.5 hours to come back and do the final treatment. So we'll see you in about 4 hours. Well, it's been about 4.5 hours, so we thought we'd come down and give this a check. Looks like it's dried enough. We'll hit it with a sandpaper like we did last time. Kind of scuff sand it, again with the grain. Smooth out the surface. You can see sometimes there'll be little nubs or even a bubble occasionally. This one seems fine. Smoothing those out now seems to make all the difference. Again, on a larger project, this may take some time, but you want to make sure you get good adhesion on your next coat, so it's worth taking the time. Then we'll tack it off, just like before. And we're going to add one more coat of the satin polyurethane. It's something that, it's kind of personal preference, but if you wanted one more coat, for instance, if this were a countertop, or a tabletop, or a top to a chest that was going to be used for a sideboard, maybe you put on another coat. I really never have. It seems like these coats that I put on have always been sufficient for me, but that might be a personal preference. And hopefully you can see that this process is pretty simple. I think that almost anyone can do this finish, make it look professional, and be satisfied with it. So again, this coat here, I think I would do a really thin coat. We're going to let this coat dry overnight, so it'll be I guess overnight to most people would be at least 8 hours, but I'm thinking it'll be closer to 12. Then we'll come back and I'll show you the final step to get the perfect finish for furniture. Again, this is making sure I have a thin coat. Don't want anything thick here. And I'm going to take extra care on this last coat to smooth out my brush strokes. Slowly with the grain. You'll get a more even and pleasing result now. Obviously the finish flows and flattens itself too, but the brush strokes really help smooth things out for the final coat. There. that should work just fine. Again, we'll come back in the morning, give it a look-see, and put the final touch on. So here we are back this morning. Look at our finished product. See what we have here. This has been, about 13 hours since it dried. And you can see on the finish there that you have a nice, even, shiny finish. But what if on your furniture you don't want quite that much shine? Well, my final piece for the perfect finish is simply this: the white Scotch-Brite pad. It has a grit of about, they estimate, between 1,000 and 1,200, somewhere around there. What you can do with this, and I'll show you on the board, is you can dull the shine or rub it out. So if your preference is for slightly less shine and more luster, you can do it with this. It's really hard to mess up because it's such a fine grit. Again, we still want to go with the grain, but I'll show you quickly on half the board here. I will just kind of smooth this out on this end of the board. To more of a luster instead of a shine. And by that, I don't know if you can see, more of a luster here than the reflecty shine. And by doing that, you can take some of the reflection out of the finish and give it more of a rich kind of, feel. So it looks good that way. Well, that's my tips. That's my secret for the perfect finish. You can use this quite liberally. Now, let me caution, normally I would only use this after 24 hours. It's only been 12, so I'm doing it pretty lightly because I don't want to, mess things up, I guess. So do it very lightly, but wait 24 hours if you can, and then rub it out. Doing it by hand gives you a better feel of what's happening, but I think it'll work for you. If you like any of my videos, I do lots of different ones, like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and I'll see you next time.